Thou shalt speak all these words unto them, but they will not hearken to thee. Thou shalt also call unto them, but they will not answer thee. In other words, Jeremiah, I need you to get out there and keep preaching, keep telling these people. But by the way, nobody's going to listen to you.
We are Saints in the South, your source for gospel growth and good times. All right, welcome everyone. Episode 140. Marcus, Kenny, and myself, Jackson, coming at you. Hey, real quick, if you haven't checked out the General Conference highlight recap that was our first live session. If you haven't checked that out, be sure and check it out. Click on it. It's about 40 to 50 minutes long there. We actually end up having two guests on.
Two long time listeners.
Long time listeners. That's right.
Yeah.
Rick Long, and then a former missionary that served here in the Jacksonville, Florida mission. Elder Mike Barcala. Yep. So it was good having some listeners on there and getting their feedback and input. So y'all be sure and check that out.
Yeah. And if you haven't listened to that, I highly recommend it. Elder was, I still want to call him Elder Barcala.
Elder, that's right. Yeah.
So yeah, but he has a really, really interesting story. You know, he talks openly about after his mission, kind of, becoming inactive in the church for a number of years and kind of he's recently come back, into full activity in the church. And so it's really, it was inspiring to me to hear his thoughts.
Absolutely. And I'll go ahead and plug that video right here. So click on it. And we are officially at 500 subscribers. So thank you everyone for sharing and subscribing. And
now we need 5,000.
Now we need 5,000. That's right.
So didn't all the magic tricks pop out now at 500 subscribers?
No, I'm still waiting for the community tab. I'm trying to figure out how to pull that community tab up. It's not there. We're at 506 officially. So I can't get on
you probably have to. I would think you'd probably have to hold it there for a little while.
That's what one person was saying. So anyway, we'll get it up there and start using it as soon as it shows up. So
5,000 would be better.
That's right. Well, hey, so we
give it another week or two. It'll be there.
That's right. So we begin the book of Jeremiah this week, and we cover most of it. And the title of it is "Before I Formed Thee in the Belly, I Knew Thee." But Marcus is going to kick us off with a little background on Jeremiah.
Yeah, Jeremiah, one of the only things I ever knew about, the only time that I think I ever really truly mentioned Jeremiah was whenever I would explain the Book of Mormon about when it started, and I would say this started about the time that Jeremiah was prophet in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Just to give a time, just to kind of get people to understand how far back this was, etc., or when the Book of Mormon was. But anyway, so Old Testament prophet, he was born to a priestly family. And he prophesied in Judah from 626 to 586 BC. Jeremiah, a Levite, came from Anath. These are going to be some crazy words, and I apologize for butchering them. But Anathoth. It sounds like I got a list, but that's how it says. A town of priests that lay a few miles northeast of Jerusalem in the tribal territory of Benjamin. He labored in his prophetic calling during the reign of of at least four kings of Judah: Josiah, Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, and Zedekiah. I know two of those. He began his labors as a youth. Yeah, sorry. Thank you. He began his labors as a youth in approximately 627 BC and was the leading prophet in Jerusalem, serving with, and y'all help me with this one, Habakkuk.
Yeah, Habakkuk.
Anyway,
I think something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, Zephaniah,
Yep,
Lehi, and others. So Lehi and Jeremiah were prophets at the same time. Since Lehi and Nephi refer to Jeremiah's prophecies, it is safe to assume that some of them were recorded on the brass plates. So they had the teachings of Jeremiah with them. With the exception of Josiah, all the kings of Judah during Jeremiah's ministry were unworthy men. And it goes on to talk about how basically the people were just plain wicked. I mean, you had children being sacrificed, idol worship, It was bad. It was a very bad time. Jeremiah was ordained to be a prophet in the premortal life. During his approximately 40 years as prophet, he taught against idolatry and immorality among the Jewish people. He had to face continuous opposition and insult. After the fall of Jerusalem, the Jews who escaped into Egypt took Jeremiah with them, where, according to tradition, they stoned him to death. So he, Jeremiah's, as I learned about Jeremiah, I started realizing that this is a prophet. I wouldn't want to be any prophet, but I definitely don't want to be Jeremiah. That man had a time. His whole ministry, as a matter of fact, when you you start off the story of Jeremiah with the famous scripture, before I knew thee, I formed thee in the belly, or before I formed thee, I knew thee in the belly. Sorry. In the belly, I knew thee. And so basically it's about premortal existence, how we lived before. This is the scripture that we use to show that we had a premortal life before this, etc. But as I've learned about Jeremiah and knowing what he did endure, that statement to me is absolutely profound and comforting to know that, the Lord knew Jeremiah so well that he would be capable of having that life. And it's the same thing with us. He knows us. He knows what we're capable of. Obviously, we got to lean on him. It ain't like he's going to leave us to ourselves. But he knew Jeremiah enough that he knew that he would lean on the Lord and that he would get through what he had to get through. And I'm going to tell you, man, you talk about doomsday prophets. I mean, you could call Jeremiah a doomsday prophet because he basically just lived amongst wicked people the whole time. I mean, it's
right. Yeah, I want to add just this little bit right here as well.
Yeah.
From it says,
I didn't read all. Yeah.
I like this part. It says he was surrounded by plenty of prophets.
Yes,
but they were the smooth, easygoing, popular, professional preachers whose words awakened no conscience and who assured the people that the nation was safe in the protecting care of God. This was a true message in Isaiah's day, but that time was long since past, and Jerusalem was destined for captivity. Thus, Jeremiah was doomed to preach an unwelcome message, while the false prophets persuaded the people that he was unpatriotic, uninspired, and pessimistic.
Yes.
So he was he was by himself.
Prosperity gospel's been around for a long time.
That's right. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I hate going off of what you just said. It goes right along with it. He was surrounded by prophets. If you read, I don't believe this is one of the chapters that we had to read, but if you read in chapter 28 of Jeremiah, there's a person called Hananiah. Yes, I'm trying to say that right. Hananiah was another one of these smooth talking preacher prophets. It is an absolutely cool story, man. Basically, in a nutshell, Jeremiah wore a wooden yoke around his neck, and he actually, told all the kings around, you put this wooden yoke on your neck too, because right now, basically, if you're not yoked to the Lord, you're not going to make it. I mean, it was basically an outward expression of a commitment to the Lord. And anyway, he had that wooden, but this Hananiah comes up to him and basically says, just as sure as, he took the yoke off his neck, the wooden yoke, and threw it down and broke it. And he said, just as sure as that yoke's broke, basically, Jeremiah is not teaching truth and all this stuff, but Jeremiah goes back on him. It's just a great interaction, saying that, well, you've broken this wooden yoke, but the Lord now has cast iron yokes around your necks. Wow. I mean, it was just like, he just starts putting it to him right there in the middle of all. Anyway, chapter 28 is a great chapter as well. I mean, I'm telling you this, man, Jeremiah, he had a hard hand to deal with. He was given a hard lot to have to do, a hard mission, but he stood up to it, and he had some hesitancy that we'll learn about a little later. But yeah, he had to go. It reminds me of Mormon. I think it's in that same thing when it talked about how he's much like the prophet Mormon, had to live among wicked people, but he stayed true, man. He stayed true.
Well, and like you said, he had some hesitancy, and that's pointed out in the very first chapter.
Yes.
He's verse 6. Then said I, Lord God, behold, I cannot speak, for I am a child. But the Lord said unto me, say not, I am a child, for thou shalt go to all that I shall send thee, and whatsoever I command thee, thou shalt speak. And be not afraid of their faces, for I am with thee to deliver thee, saith the Lord. man, that and it's almost a continual theme with many prophets that are called. We saw it with Moses and everything. Those who second guess themselves, second guess their abilities, and of course we get that as well when we receive callings. But I like to think more of it at this time because there is so much evil and wickedness out there, and they put it out there for the masses to consume at such an overwhelming rate. Is again getting back to the reason we started this podcast, is because there is a need for us, for everybody, for Christians to open their mouths,
right,
and send it right back at them.
Right.
Put it on
Yes.
the airways, put it out there.
And
Speak up.
if you're not sure, that I was going to say verse 9. If I was hoping you'd go one more forward, because verse 9 says, "Then the Lord put forth his hand and touched my mouth, and the Lord said unto me, Behold, I have put my words in thy mouth."
Perfect. Yeah,
that's the role of a prophet right there, man.
That's right.
That's exactly. He didn't feel adequate. Obviously, he didn't want that calling. Nobody ever aspires to be a prophet. I know I certainly wouldn't. Good grief.
Something I wondered about? I want to ask y'all a question. Do you think that the people that these prophets like Jeremiah that had so much self-doubt, and even Moses, you think that the people that they were teaching at the time knew about their self-doubt? Do you think they had any idea?
I don't know. That's a good
I'm just
question.
curious. You know why? Because it's funny, when we were watching General Conference this past weekend, my wife and I were talking about President Nelson, how he just exudes, like, he's very, very confident, but not in an arrogant way at all. He's
Right.
he's very relaxed and very like, he's just always got this smile, and he's always got this sparkle in his eye. Like, oh, I know stuff. I know some stuff. I know some stuff that I can't tell you,
In
but
the
I
days
know
ahead.
some stuff. And he seems very, very self-assured, like that he has a calling and he knows what it is. And, and I wonder if he ever doubts himself, because I tell you, when every time I've watched President Nelson speak, he seems so relaxed and so absolutely self-assured, and not arrogant or not cocky, but very, very humble. But at the same time, like, look, this is what I do. Like, I'm the prophet, and I think I have some words of prophecy for you right now.
Right. I think it's got a lot to do with, to answer your question, I would say probably those closest to him probably would have more insight to that than the masses, the general public. But also, it's just got a lot to do with being prepared for a long time. Somebody like President Nelson's been a general authority, and before that, a general officer, I believe. I want to say he was in the Sunday school presidency or something. I can't remember. But anyway, he's been working in the church. And then even before that,
he's been, these men who,
it's not that
the men who become the prophet have been groomed, if you will, from their whole life. These are people that the Lord has called and chosen, and he's prepared them. He's literally spent decades upon decades preparing them to fulfill that role.
It's interesting you say that, because I've had thoughts like that before. I mean, we are priesthood holders, and so we know that there's only so many callings that we can have an award. We know what those callings are. You have to sort of prepare your mind. If you're following the Spirit and you're doing the best you can, and you're repenting and you're learning and you're growing, you have to have it cross your mind that you could be this thing, or you could be called to this calling, or so you kind of do just have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. I'm just kidding, but you know what I mean. And so when you talk about that, do they feel inadequate and things? I think every time, if you don't feel a little inadequate, then I don't know. They're special persons. All I can tell you. But
so I think that feelings of inadequacy becomes much more so in the beginning of their calling,
and then
when they're called. And then when they kind of, like Marcus said, when you settle in, or really get really close to God, you increase your spirituality. I think that lacking in confidence begins to go away. And I think of a scripture here in the Doctrine and Covenants. Let me pull it up real quick in section 121. So 121 verse 45. But the entire of the scripture is 34 through 46. But verse 45, he says, "Let thy bowels also be full of charity towards all men and to the household of faith, and let virtue garnish thy thoughts unceasingly. Then shall thy confidence wax strong in the presence of God, and the doctrine of the priesthood shall distill upon thy soul as the dews from heaven." So I think that people like President Nelson, Jeremiah, after he's well into his calling, Moses, their confidence becomes strong in the presence of God and in their calling, rather than at the beginning stages.
Yeah, and who the Lord calls, he qualifies. I think it's interesting that Jeremiah says, he says, "Behold, I cannot speak, for I am a child." I think what he's coming from in that instance is that I don't know a lot. Like, I don't know enough to be a prophet. I'm a child. I only have so much knowledge. Like, I don't understand everything I need to understand, or how can I teach these people about the atonement? I don't understand it fully. I don't, or whatever.
Like Moses, Moses supposedly had some kind of speech
like
impediment or some difficulty in speaking, because he was like, I can't talk to people. Like,
right.
He was like, God, you got the wrong person. Like, I'm not the one you want to talk to people.
Right.
Right.
And I think the Lord is just telling him, like, remember, it's really not about you. It's about me. In other words, I'm going to use you to say the things that I need to say. It's not so much that, Kenny O'Bara or Jackson Howe or Marcus Corbett has to go out and convince people of certain things. We've never been told to go out and convince anybody of anything. That's really not our job, as anything in church. Really, it's to go out and teach and say the things that the Spirit wants us to say the things the Lord wants us to say, and have people make their own minds up about things, and what they're going to follow and how they're going to act. And so I love that he says, I'm a child. Like, I don't, but that's exactly what the Lord needs. Joseph Smith, 14 years old, it's Mormon was what, super young when he was called. He was a sober
16,
child. Really young.
8. Was he 8?
Yeah,
I
can't remember it. But yeah, super young. But that's what he just needs, somebody that can listen and do what they need to do, when they're supposed to do it. So be obedient, basically.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that's the ticket. Is the Lord needs us to be obedient to him and willing to do what he asks us to do, because just like in verse 9 there, where Jeremiah said, the Lord put forth his hand and said, behold, I've put my words in thy mouth. So it's, Jeremiah didn't have to do this on his own. The Lord needed him to be willing and obedient. And then, Jeremiah said, okay, God, I'll do it. And then the Lord put the words in his mouth.
That's right. And sometimes we got to start speaking before the Lord puts the words in our mouth. Sometimes you got to stand up and just start talking, say what you do know, and then the Lord will put everything else in there. I love verse 17 of chapter 1. It says, and the Lord tells him, therefore gird up thy loins and arise and speak.
Right.
There's your instructions.
Right. Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah,
the last little thought that I had about this, and kind of having the faith and the courage to stand up and speak, and we get on later on into the where we're talking about the gathering of Israel and everything,
right?
But part of the gathering of Israel is speaking up and sharing the gospel, right? So if I sit here and I compare myself to the other fellow podcasters out there, or so who we got, John Hilton the third, right? Who are some others?
Hank Smith,
Tyler, John by the way,
right?
Jacob Hansen. Jacob Hansen. That's
Jacob
right.
Hansen, yeah.
So if I sit here and I compare myself to them, then I'm definitely going to want to lean back.
Yeah, you're going to quit.
I'm not. I'm not on the same stage, right? But I may not be as eloquent in speech. I may not have the knowledge, the background, the degrees and doctorates and everything that they may have. However, that does not make me any less worthy or any less capable of sharing the gospel and hopefully inspiring someone somewhere in a positive way. And, and that's what we have to remember, is not to fall into the comparison train there. So
yeah, if we have truth, we need to speak it. There's nothing wrong with echoes of truth. I mean, if it's something that John, by the way, has already said, well, I'm going to say it too.
Echo it. That's right. I like that word.
I'm a witness to that. You know, there you go. So
very good.
But yeah, the Lord will qualify us, as he calls us. That's the truth. So Jeremiah is just in a really bad spot, man. Judah is just terrible. There's a lot of just him preaching to the people of Judah and telling them basically, y'all got to get it together. Here's something I thought was very interesting, which also was very sad in a way. Forgive me because I know they're chopped up. So I know it's 1 through 3 and then it's 7, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so go to 7. But so let's talk about this thing here where he's at the temple. In chapter 7, are we ready?
Yeah.
Seven's a great.
Let's jump on this. Seven is really
man.
Powerful, and I think I wanted to say it's interesting to me that the lesson, the chapters, it's not every single chapter of these books,
right.
They're the necessarily part of the lesson. So this one's Jeremiah 1 through 3, then 7, then 16 through 18, then 20. So it's like, there's this big gap, and there's like, wait a minute, you can't leave out chapter 7.
Dude, it's really good. And there's a lot of good chapters that this time, because there's a lot of these chapters that we're not reading in the lesson that actually give some background to the chapter we're in. Mm-hmm. But anyway, in chapter 7, man, then when he's at the temple, obviously he's preaching to them, but these people, man, in a nutshell, it's verses 9. I like verses 9, 10, and 11. Will ye steal, murder? And this is Jeremiah speaking to the people at the temple, basically. Or I feel like it is. I think it is. Anyway, he says, will ye steal, murder, and commit adultery, and swear falsely, and burn incense unto Baal, and walk after other gods whom ye know not? I love that. Gods you don't even know. I mean, let's just be honest. You know that their names, but who are they?
That's it.
Yeah. Anyway, and come and stand before me in this house, which is called by my name, and say, we are delivered to do all these abominations. In other words, you're going to tell me you're going to do all these terrible things, all these wrong things, and yet come to the temple and say, we're safe because we're in the temple.
Yeah.
And it's, and they just felt like they could do as they pleased. As long as they stood in the temple, they were fine. And that's basically, in a nutshell, what they're saying. And it says, is this house, which is called by my name, become a den of robbers in your eyes? Behold, even I have seen it, saith the Lord. And this, of course, harkens back to when Jesus cast out the money exchangers, and he basically den of thieves. He said,
he called them whited sepulchres full of dead men's bones.
Yes. Yeah,
that's one of my favorite little metaphors in the Bible there. I love that. And so, here Jeremiah definitely, man, he's got some harsh words for these people, but he's calling out hypocrisy, and it's really
absolutely.
This also, these verses here reminded me a lot of, going back to General Conference this past weekend. There was a lot of messages that were focused hard on, drawing close to Jesus Christ. It's all about that. It's all about, being close to the Lord, being close to Jesus Christ, all this, all this other stuff might be good, but that's not what it's really all about. All this other stuff is just appendages to this, to Jesus Christ. And so, he's calling out these people here, and there's I'm trying to remember what, hold on a second. Hold on. Oh man, I can't remember now. I had the note, but there was, whose talk was it that said, you cannot sin on Saturday night and expect to have your salvation intact when you and be able to partake the sacrament on Sunday. Whose talk was that?
Was that a 70? Oh, man. Oh, I can't remember. I know what you're talking about though. I remember it. I remember that saying, because I thought that was pretty clever.
Yeah, because this right here, I'm pulling out some notes right now, because that's what it actually reminded me of that, and I totally forgot which talk it was. But there was a lot of messages from this past weekend that were focused on that type of message. And this chapter 7, Jeremiah chapter 7, really, really focuses hard on that. Basically, we can't be hypocritic.
Hypocritical.
Hippocrates, yes. Hypocritical.
Hippopotamus.
hippopotamus, the hippopotamus.
Hippopotamus.
Yeah. So, so yeah, there are a lot of us people that feel like, well, I'm doing the good things. Like, so in here, he's talking about, there's a lot of people say, well, I'm not bad. I'm not, okay, if ye oppress not the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, and shed not innocent blood. It's like, look, I mean, I've literally heard people say, look, I'm not killing anybody.
Yeah, right.
I'm not cheating on my wife. I'm just doing this, I'm just doing, like, this is what he's talking about. He's calling these people out who are saying, oh, well, I'm okay because I'm here at the temple though,
right.
And I'm not, I'm not a bad guy. I'm not killing people. I'm not doing these things, but he's got a pretty harsh message for him. And I feel like this is important. This is one of those messages that's timeless, that I feel like is just as relevant for us today as it was at the time of Jeremiah.
Yeah, it definitely passes the time test, for sure.
This was something that got Jeremiah in trouble. This is really what a lot of people didn't listen to Jeremiah because he was sort of a doomsday type prophet. So they didn't want to hear, it was always, you're going to be destroyed. You're going to be destroyed. Your city's going to be destroyed.
It was Garrett W. Gong's talk. I'm sorry to interrupt you. That's I was finally found it. We cannot knowingly sin on Saturday, then expect to be forgiven by taking the sacrament on Sunday. That was the quote I was looking for.
Right.
Garrett W. Gong, great talk.
Right.
Anyway.
But yeah, this, him talking against the temple, and he basically said the temple would be destroyed. That's what Jeremiah told the people. And they were just like, what? You can't say that. You cannot say that this temple is going to be destroyed. So a lot of things got him in trouble. Obviously it mirrors Jesus Christ, him saying that the temple, he could lay down his body, and they thought he was talking about destroying the temple, and and that was a bad thing. And so there's a lot of similarities there, but he basically, one thing I wanted to make mention about this temple thing that just happened recently with David A. Bednar, with the open house that they had for the Washington, D.C. temple, when he was talking to the media. He said this. He said, let's see if I can get it here. Where did I have it? How did I just miss that?
We need to insert the Jeopardy music.
I have lost it. Here we go. Here we go. As soon as you got the Jeopardy going, I knew it. So David A. Bednar said this: as media gathered Monday, April the 18th of 2022 to see the newly renovated Washington, D.C. temple, Elder David A. Bednar did not focus on the temple's prominence nor structure. He told local and national media representatives gathered in the Temple Visitor Center, "We hope that what you'll learn today is not just about this building," which is what the people were focusing on when they were with Jeremiah. We're in the temple. We're in this structure, so we're safe. He says, "I hope you won't just focus about this building, how it was constructed and how it was renovated. For us, what is most important is how our hearts are changed as we learn about God and Jesus Christ, feel their love, and serve our brothers and sisters." So it's not about the building. It's about the ordinances and the covenants performed and received inside the temple that give us, make us change. And so these people were totally missing the forest for the trees as they stood there in the temple and said, "We're safe, we're good because we're standing here in this building." It means nothing,
I had a friend of mine growing up, and anytime we got to talking about religion a little bit, or maybe just the end of days or a catastrophe coming, he always talked about, and he wasn't really a church going individual, but he always said that the first place that he would go in the wake of a natural disaster was a church building.
Oh,
he was going to go to a church building because he knew that God would protect the church building.
Well, let me tell you this.
That's not necessarily the case.
That's what I was fixing to say. Think about this. It's actually a proven fact that it's not, because if you look in 3rd Nephi chapter 11, or a little before, as you read up to the part where Jesus Christ appears to the people, they all do travel to Bountiful, because Bountiful is where the temple is. And by the way, there's a new Book of Mormon video out. And it's absolutely amazing. It's awesome. Book of Mormon Central has it. what am I trying to say? The Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints,
Right.
I guess, on their YouTube channel. Anyway, but I told my kids, I said, hey, I said, this is something that I would probably do if there was total destruction around my home. Everything's leveled. I said, I'm trying to get to probably to a temple if I know it's close by. Actually, we're getting one in Jacksonville, so it's a little closer. Not quite as, that's awesome. But what I'm getting to is that sure, this would be I think a thing that more righteous people would want to do, because not only did they know the temple was in Bountiful, but they knew the prophet was there. They knew Nephi was there. And so, yeah, I would probably try to go there too, especially if it was within walking distance. I would definitely start heading that way. And when they got there, though, the temple was partially destroyed. A lot of things were destroyed. And so, but it's a building. It's not, the building itself is not what we believe in. You know what I mean?
And plus, even if the building, I mean, the temples of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are high quality. They're not cheap buildings. These aren't
right.
just some,
look at
like,
Salt Lake,
throw up some
Salt Lake City right now.
Yeah, these are buildings that are made to last through the millennium, to withstand. These are, just like the old cathedrals and things that are built. But
absolutely.
But the thing is, that Jeremiah is talking to these people, I feel like they're missing the mark, because they're not there because they think, oh, if there's a storm, this is a good, strong building to be in. No. They're thinking, I'm righteous because I'm in here. And it reminds me, the old joke, like, dude, being in a garage doesn't make you a car. If you sleep in your garage, that doesn't make you a car.
It's true.
So just true. being in the temple doesn't necessarily make you righteous.
Right.
We used to have a garage band, so that just didn't make us a band either, just because we was in a garage. But no, it is true though. That's what they're doing. They're really trying to cover up. They're really trying to satisfy themselves. They're really trying to make themselves comfortable and feel good about sinning. Honestly, they're looking for excuses to sin. And if we can do this, so now I don't want people out there that are, struggling, and they are maybe not living like they should, or they don't feel like they are, or whatever. I don't want people to think like, well, I'm not going to go to church then, because I might smoke every day, but I go to church every Sunday. Well, great. Come on to church. I mean, that's absolutely wonderful. That's not what we're saying. These people were willfully rebelling, and they were just basically trying to use the temple as an excuse to continue to do evil things. So this is a whole nother thing altogether. Those that are struggling, and you go to church every Sunday and you still struggle during the week, keep coming to church. Keep coming to church.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. That's an important
absolutely
point to make in that.
So where else?
Because it's not necessarily about because you can have person A that's smoking and sinning and drinking on Saturday and coming to church on Sunday, and person
B
on to church just doing the same thing, but the Lord knows our hearts.
Right.
If the Lord knows if your heart is sincere and you're trying to, and you love God and you're trying to become a better person, you're trying to grow closer to Him, or if you have no desire and you're just wanting to show up at church to try to,
pacify,
make yourself feel better or make yourself look better. In the
real intent is the key. Real intent.
I think this point was made in conference. I may be wrong, but I think it was. If it wasn't in conference, it was something that I saw or read right before. But
I think it was too. Actually, I'm trying to think of the talk. It reminds me of a talk recently I've heard.
The difference there, that God sees a difference and recognizes a difference between rebellion and weakness.
Yes.
There is a difference, distinct difference between open rebellion against God and weaknesses that we succumb to.
Yep.
Two
totally different things. They really are.
Yep.
The Jeremiah 7, just to kind of end out my thoughts on Jeremiah 7, was in verse 27. Just to sort of emphasize once again the difficulty of his mission, of Jeremiah's mission. This is what the Lord, after all this is going on, this is what the Lord says to him, verse 27. Therefore, thou shalt speak all these words unto them, but they will not hearken to thee. Thou shalt also call unto them, but they will not answer thee. In other words, Jeremiah, I need you to get out there and keep preaching, keep telling these people. But by the way, nobody's going to listen to you. I mean, for the next 30 years. I mean, basically, if I got my timeline right, somebody can help me out with that. But I think it was another 30 years after this that he continued to preach. And the Lord told him, nobody's going to listen. Nobody's listening to you, dude. But I need you out there every day saying what you need to say. And I'm thinking, good grief. Could you imagine?
Yeah.
Could you imagine being a bishop of a ward and nobody shows up ever? And you got to do it for 30 years?
30 years, right. Yeah.
I don't know that
Yeah.
I'd be like, Lord, why?
That's a long time.
What am I
Yeah, I
doing?
don't think I could do it for 30 weeks.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's just, but it
30
blows my
years?
mind. Yeah, it blows
I mean,
my mind.
1 year would be ridiculous. That'd be like, I've been
Yeah.
doing this for a year and not a
Yeah.
single person's listening to me.
And the only people that did this,
was it Elder Christofferson that gave that talk?
it may have been. I can't remember.
I'm
I can't
terrible.
remember.
Whoever's listening to this right now, set us straight.
We have
Bleep bloop it in the comments.
yeah.
Because you're right though, Jackson. I do remember that. I
Yeah.
remember that talk as well. I can't find it in my notes right now, but yeah.
And the only people that did listen has already hightailed it out of there.
That's what I'm saying.
Lehi and his family, they were like,
They're gone. You know, and those were thoughts of mine too. As I thought about this, I thought Jeremiah was such a great person, just as great as Lehi or greater.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, whatever you want to, however you want to measure that. But Jeremiah's family hated him as well. The people hated him. His family hated him. Man, and then you look at Lehi and they get out of there. And not to say Lehi and them didn't have their struggles. Sure, they had their struggles, but it's almost like, why didn't he just jump in with Lehi and let's go?
Right.
But the Lord needed the Lord needed. To me, it boils down to agency. The Lord needs that agency to be exercised. He allows these people to make their decisions, even though he knows their hearts and says, you know what, they're really not going to listen to you, but give them the chance.
And, Jeremiah could have very easily took the route that Jonah tried to take and be like,
absolutely.
Look, this is stupid. I'm getting out of here.
Yeah.
And, we have the benefit of hindsight now. We saw how that worked out for Jonah, and I'm sure had Jeremiah tried to take that path, it wouldn't have worked out very well for him either. But he was obedient. Like Jeremiah, talk about like being in the face of insurmountable odds.
Now Jeremiah did want to quit. In Jeremiah chapter 20, verse 9, he says, then I said, I will not make mention of him. This is Jeremiah talking about the Lord. He said, then I said, I will not, because he had been going through so much violence.
Yeah.
He'd been beaten and put in stocks, and ridiculed in public. And so he was like, you know what? And this is what he says. He says, then I said, I will not mention of him nor speak any more in his name. But then it says this, but his word was in mine heart as a burning fire shut up in my bones. And I was weary with forbearing and I could not stay. He just could not. He could not. Physically, he wanted to. He's like, I didn't want to be a prophet in the first place. I told you I didn't. I've been doing this for decades. My family hates me. The people hate me. Nobody's listening. Why?
What good am I doing?
But yet he couldn't stop. He couldn't stop because it consumed him so much. The Spirit said, no, you cannot stop. You got to keep going. And it just put it on, I just started thinking and really feeling bad for Jeremiah. It's like, good grief, man. And his ultimate demise, we don't know for sure. Tradition holds it that he was carried off and stoned to death eventually. But obviously his reward wasn't supposed to be in this life anyway. It's obviously in the next, but he wanted to quit, man. I understand. I understand, you know what I mean? I can sympathize with that and think, wow, I don't think less of you, Jeremiah, for thinking that. Good grief. If that's all you thought, I mean, so good grief. But
I mean, the thought crossed his mind for a moment.
But,
I mean,
he just can't.
Even Christ himself had a moment of weakness.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's the weight of God's word.
Yep. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done.
That's right.
That's right. So 16 references the gathering of Israel, right?
Right.
I'm going to open up right here with a quote from Elder LeGrand Richards.
Oh yeah.
You ready?
LeGrand Richards.
See right here.
Gonna Richards it up.
Where do you find those fishers and hunters that we read about in this great prophecy of Jeremiah? These 13,000 missionaries of this church and those who have preceded them from the time that the prophet Joseph received the truth and sent the messengers out to share it with the world. And so they've gone out fishing and hunting and gathering them from the hills and the mountains and the holes and the rocks.
Get them, LeGrand.
Get them, LeGrand.
Get them.
Yep, the great missionary force. Man,
I think he said 14,000 at his time. What are we at, like 60 now? 60,000, I think, worldwide?
Yeah,
something like that. I don't know, but
it did surge up to like, wasn't it 77,000?
It was at one time until they raised the bar. They started raising the bar
until things kind of balanced back out. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, man, and I think that's one of President Nelson's greatest topics is that of the gathering of Israel.
Yeah.
And how that is done. You think of just missionary work, but it's not just missionary work, it's temple work. It's also the perfecting of the saints. All of that, all the work that we do as it pertains to the gospel of Jesus Christ is all about the gathering of Israel. So
it was so bad during Jeremiah's day that the Lord told him 3 things not to do, and one was not to marry or father children. One was not to lament those who died by the sword of famine, since they brought these judgments upon themselves, and the other was not to feast or eat with friends in Jerusalem, since feasting was a sign of celebration and an eating together is a symbol of fellowship. So he couldn't show that he fellowshiped these people. In addition, Jeremiah was commanded to explain clearly to the people the reasons for his actions, as well as the reasons for their coming punishment. Man, what a sad time to be a prophet. Good grief. But, that goes back to this thing where, when I was in the bishopric, and I'm sure you guys serving in bishoprics and stuff have heard and talked about, we talk about, disfellowshipping or, excommunication, which I think they use another term now. They don't use excommunication anymore. I can't remember what it is. But anyway, you lose your membership. Yeah, it's a better way to say it, but it's still the same thing. But it's just a better way to say it, so it don't sound so
harsh.
Well, harsh or separate. Like we don't want anything
separated.
To do with
Right.
Right. It's not that. It doesn't mean that. But anyway, do what?
Another handbook.
It's in there. It's in there. Yeah, I just can't remember the phrase that they use. But anyway. As you read stuff like this, like he was told not to marry, not to fellowship or even associate themselves, go eat with these people. As you think about because a lot of people had those questions when we brought up certain things that we had to bring up with certain members about disfellowship or even excommunication or whatever it was, and some people would have the I don't know how to say it, but anyway, they would say like, why do we even want to mess with them? They're not openly apostates going out and teaching false doctrine. That's sort of a different thing altogether. Some of these were just, sexual sins and things like that, breaking the law of chastity, things like that, promiscuous and things. And so you think, well, they're not hurting anybody. But the thing is that you can't be a member of the church and be openly doing these things that are contrary to the teachings of the church. So that's one of the reasons you have to protect the church. And that's what basically the Lord's doing with Jeremiah here. You have to protect my gospel. You have to protect the integrity of the teachings of the gospel. And so you can't associate with these people. You can't be seen acting like everything's good with them. It doesn't mean, I'm sure the Lord didn't tell him go be unkind to these people or shun these people. It was just, you can't go out there acting like everything's a-okay, because it's not. It needs to be remedied. It needs to be fixed. So it was a sad time. It was a very sad time for Jeremiah. And the more you read about it, it's like, wow, poor old feller, and thank goodness. I actually, as you mentioned Lehi a while ago, I keep thinking, man, Lehi got out of there, man.
He did.
He's like, I'm gone, man. I'm gone.
See you, Jeremiah. Better you than me.
Glad I had the dream and you didn't. That's sad. Well, Lehi had a family though, apparently, and Jeremiah didn't. So there was more to it there. But anyway,
with everything that Lehi went through, he was the fortunate one.
Right. It really was.
I would much rather been in Lehi's position than
Jeremiah's. Yes, that's true. That's true.
No question.
Mentally, sure.
That is true.
So I had one more scripture to share.
Yeah.
Did Did y'all have anything else?
I wanted to just the last thing on that set on that what was it? Where was we at? 16.
Yeah.
Let me make sure because it may not be worth bringing up. No, I don't. No, I don't think so. I think we're good. So we'll go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And you say, Kenny, did you have anything? You're good.
No.
Okay.
I'm good.
All right. So I'm going to share this picture as I share this scripture here. So you got it there?
Yes.
So this picture comes from the Come Follow Me manual, but Jeremiah 18 verse 6. O house of Israel, can I not do with you as this potter, saith the Lord? Behold, as the clay is in the potter's hand, so are ye in mine hand, O house of Israel. The Lord is pleading with us to allow him to mold us into what he would have us become. And I think that's one of the hardest things for us to do, to allow. But if we do, he will form us into the greatest possible human being that we can and could become. I really like that picture there. And I mean, and thinking about actually, what do you call it? A potter, what?
Potter's
Yeah.
wheel. What do you about that?
Yeah, he's just a potter.
The individual is he?
Yeah, the potter.
Potter?
Yeah,
He's a potter. Okay.
Potter. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just thinking about a potter and the amount of shaping and forming that they can do, right? And just applying that to the Lord and how he can form us, and how we have seen him do throughout the scriptures, and I'm sure how he's done in our personal lives, but he can do it on a level that is really hard for us to comprehend. That's the kind of stuff that President Nelson understands, right? You know, you speaking earlier and him,
Right.
the understanding that he has, he really has that understanding.
Yeah.
And that's what he's pleading for us. And that, you know, you thinking about how emotional he was at the end. I mean, you think about how emotional we get when we think about our children, right?
Yeah.
That's how President Nelson sees us, I believe. So
you speaking of the pottery thing, it does remind me of the story where Jeremiah goes to the people and basically, I think was it at the temple? Can't remember. Anyway, remember he held up the pot and he was saying basically, if y'all don't turn yourselves around, you'll be like this pot. Basically, and he throws it down and breaks it. This is the Lord. This is you. Remember the old this is the egg crack.
Your brain on drugs.
Your brain, This is your brain.
This is your brain.
This is your brain on drugs.
Any questions?
That's basically what he did to these people.
He's
hilarious. Like, this is you. If you don't change, this is what the Lord's going to do to you. Wham! And he busts it. And of course, that's actually what got him where we find ourselves in chapter 20. Why he was put into stocks and ridiculed and beat and all kinds of stuff, because he prophesied that and told them that y'all would be destroyed and this temple will be destroyed and whatever, everything. So, but yeah, that's why he got into that trouble, because of that pottery, the pot, he took and showed him.
Yeah. So the thing we don't understand though, when you were showing that picture of the potter there, it really got me, because the Lord really does want us to become the best possible versions of ourselves, because he wants us to become like him. Mm-hmm. So when he's molding and shaping us, that's a painful process. But what it's hard to remember is that the shape that he's trying to form me into is him. And that's the best possible. It's, he's not just turning me into a cup or a pot, he's trying to turn me into him, because we know, through the restored gospel, we know that God doesn't intend for us to just sit on a cloud playing a harp for all eternity. Right. He wants us to become like him. We are his children.
Yep.
And that in this life is a painful process, and, trying to become more like him, trying to trying to emulate. That's what, Jesus Christ came here to do. One of the things that he did, we talk about the atonement a lot, and not to downplay the atonement, but part of what he did was to be an example to us, like to show the humility that he had, the love that he had, just like that. That's what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to just look at him and say, wow, that Jesus, what a great guy he was.
Yeah.
No, that's what we're supposed to do.
Just to become, yes, right. Yeah.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, very good. That's a good place to end. Until next time, y'all keep on striving. Thank you so much for checking out our podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure and leave us a review and rating. And then, of course, hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Our ultimate goal is to help everyone experience gospel growth and good times as we strive to become the best versions of ourselves and ultimately who God needs us and wants us to become. May He bless each of you in that effort. Y'all keep on striving.